Hey there. Yeah, for this week's discussion, then we have a certain case you should see there on Blackboard. I just cut and pasted from another textbook. This is the case of a patient going here by the name of Angus McBride, who's got some esophageal issues. Apparently needs to have some laparoscopic surgery. The details aren't so crucial. It could be any sort of surgery here, but there are a lot of details given in the case, actually, a lot of the medical specific technical details. And so anyway, we can imagine that those details are indeed conveyed fully, honestly, conscientiously by the doctor. Talks about the terms of the diagnosis, the terms of the prognosis, lays out the possible side effects, the possible risks, the different alternatives available, and so on. We can imagine that is all disclosed in full, no problem. It's just that what we have here, and the point of this case is to kind of zero in on, well, there is another element of a situation of informed consent that may or may not be relevant, and that has to do with the doctor's specific experience. So the point here is that this doctor, who is otherwise extremely or eminently qualified, I suppose, has only done this specific procedure a very small number of times. I think they say 2. And the question is just whether she is obliged or required by the ideal of informed consent to disclose that to the patient. She may think, and she may have good reasons for thinking, that she is, perfectly qualified to do it and there's no real issue. We can imagine, though, for example, after the fact, should there be some sort of problem, and should that fact only come out later on, what the patient would think, whether the patient would think that should have been conveyed by under the terms of a reasonable person's standard of disclosure. Anybody would want to know that. But you know what? We can also, though, think, it's kind of useful, because I just find this comes up, and you may have direct experience with it yourself. We can roll this back. We don't have to worry specifically about Angus McBride, but just roll it back to patients. There was a first one. And there always has to be, I guess, right? Any surgeon, say, or any doctor doing any kind of significant procedure has always got to do it for the first time. And we can just think, especially in those situations, whether that fact ought to be disclosed or not. You might think maybe it doesn't need to be if they have the proper training. Perhaps it's not really an issue. Perhaps that would frighten the patient or worry them so much, especially, say, if they didn't have too many other doctors or no other doctors to turn to, say. In that case, it's conceivable that it could fall under the idea of therapeutic privilege as something that the doctor might be permitted to exclude from disclosure on the basis of the well-being or the welfare of the patient, him or herself. So anyway, we'll just have a think about this. You can think about the specific thing here, or just think in general about even times where a doctor has no direct experience. I mean, obviously has the training and the education, but everything happens for the first time. And just whether that should be something that ought to be disclosed according to what we understand by informed consent.